Hey, everybody. Welcome to Toasted the podcast. We are so excited to have you here and have you join the conversation. Margie and Nick here. And it's probably our final podcast of 2022, which is incredible to even be able to say. And we thank each and every one of you for the opportunity to be with you whenever it is that you're listening to this. So how are you today, Nick?
I'm doing great. Hey, also, I finally understand seasons in
What?
like a TV show. You know, when you would like say it's season 2, episode 4. I never really understood what the season was, but is it the year?
Yes. Yeah, the first year
I
that it
didn't.
was out, whatever year that might be.
Not to sound so dumb. I mean, number one, it's a trivial bit of information that I can easily get by without knowing. Two, I mean, why don't they just call it like year one? Why season? Isn't that weird?
I think it's kind of like a life skill that you're acquiring right now in this moment. Everybody calls them seasons because it
Are
used
you
to be,
serious?
yes,
Explain
where
how this
have
is a
you
life skill.
been?
Like, oh, I can't look up what Sopranos episode I want.
You need to know
Is
the
that?
season. It goes like that. Yeah, I think it harkens
Yeah,
back to
well,
when things weren't year round. You had, when something came out, there was the fall shows and then the spring shows, kind of like semesters, and you had to catch them in reruns, and you knew, all of that. So it was the season that it was aired originally. But yeah, season one
that's
is going to be
true.
year one. hmm But now with all the
I know.
streamings and all the everythings and seasons.
Someday we're gonna talk to like younger people and talk about the days when television wasn't streaming. It
Oh my
reminds me of like
gosh.
conversations around the table now, where like I'm like, do you guys remember that rotary phone?
Yeah.
And my brothers and sisters were laughing because we had, I think I might have told the story. We had a rotary phone in the kitchen with like a 90-foot cord so my mom could go to the bottom of the stairs and talk without being interrupted by the six of us. I don't know if we talked about that. I think we have.
That had to be quite a
But
challenge to
anyway,
be on a telephone and not interrupted with 6 children in the house.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, luckily, like, they had a full basement so she could go down there. But even in the basement, it honestly wasn't like, it wasn't soundproof, that's for sure. But
Well, at my
anyway,
cousin's house, no, I'm telling a story now. So at my cousin's house,
oh,
back in the day, on my dad's side of the family, they lived in an old farmhouse and it had those like metal heat thingies so you could like see down to the floor below you and you could certainly like eavesdrop
oh,
super
yeah.
easy. Yeah. Well, they also had a party line still. They were one of the last people to give up the whole party line thing. So you pick up the phone and other people all shared that phone line. You had to wait for people to get off the phone and things like that. And I remember like, oh my
Whoa.
gosh. Yeah, it was wild to hear like and I had not experienced this, growing up in the suburbs of Rochester. So the first time, my aunt had asked me to, I don't even know why, make a phone call. But I picked up the phone and there are people talking, and I was like, "Why are there people talking on the phone?" And they're like, all like, "Hang up the phone!" And I was like, "What is happening?" It was so strange, but yeah. And I remember like the adults would have like leave the room because there was like a serious conversation on the phone. We were like up the stairs and just completely eavesdropping in these grates to find out what was going on. So I can't imagine
Yeah, isn't that
privacy with
funny?
6 kids. Yeah.
No, no, there wasn't a lot of it. But like I think about the whole like I'm more worried about this with, I'm gonna sound like an old person here, you ready? Like with
I
this
am.
generation.
I'm
But the
excited to hear this.
discretion, right, well, the discretion that you had to have in like the corded telephone years or the communal phone, like my parents would send us out of the room a lot, and then they would
Oh
argue and
yeah.
fight, and not that they didn't do that a lot, but like when they did, it was like, we used to laugh because it's like, do they think we can't hear them?
Yeah.
Because we could, but like,
Right.
but now I think about like there's like no discretion, and so for instance, I can remember watching Crocodile Dundee with my family, and at one point, my father covering my eyes and being like, "Ooh, this part's not appropriate for kids." And like then I go, flash forward 30 years and I click on Netflix and I'm like, how is this okay on television? And my kids are like, what? It's not even TVMA. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. So
Oh
I just
no,
feel
it
I
is
feel like
interesting.
there's not
Yeah.
a lot of discretion.
No, the
Now,
discretion
I
is
don't
left
know
up
if
to the
that's,
consumer.
yeah, and I don't know how I feel about that necessarily.
Yeah, because the
I
accessibility
guess
is
time
there
will
for
tell.
anybody.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, so your original question was, how am I doing? I'm doing great. I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm always like happy when a year ends and a new one begins, right? Like I have no
Really, that's
problem.
interesting. I've heard
I've yet to
people who
have
feel
a year where
exactly the opposite.
I've never had a year that I was attached to. Like by the time
Mm-hmm.
December rolls around, I'm like, all right, ready for this one to end. I'm ready for what the new one brings. Maybe, maybe there's slightly more excitement about 2020 ending than in years past. Like I was really ready to get rid of that year, that dumpster
Yeah.
fire. But yeah, I went to the doctor yesterday, did my annual checkup, and got a couple of shots. I'm a little sore actually, one in each arm, and so I had to get my tetanus booster, and
Oof.
I got the flu shot for the first time in my life. And though I have to admit, I was thinking about the podcast a little bit. I was like, hey, you got any of those fancy Band-Aids? And they gave me a Squidward on one arm and SpongeBob on the other. So,
I
it's
love it.
good all in all to be growing up. Yeah, it's good to be growing up. I feel like I'm
No,
really making strides towards adulthood.
You are, because it's like the fact that you can choose that with all sense of pride and be like, these are my Band-Aids and I'm good with it. I know. I think of Tracy Marchand on her 400 sad Band-Aids that are just skin, flesh
Yeah, they're
colored,
just lonely.
normal Band-Aids. No, it's not. I mean, after that podcast, I happened to, do a typical Margie and cut my finger and sent you guys a text with a picture of my Black Widow Marvel Band-Aid on it. I was like, these are fun Band-Aids, people. Today is a Black Widow day. We're putting that on.
Yeah. I mean, Band-Aids are pretty like useful, not to sound silly, but like as a dad, I realize how many Band-Aids I actually go through. But unlike you, we've talked about this before. We don't have to belabor this issue, but like I just can't stock the fancy Band-Aids because then they move from like this thing that you use when you get a cut to, oh, dad bought stickers and we'll just put these on the wall and put these on our shoes. And I'm like, why are there 15 Band-Aids? Like, because they were Marvel. It's like, you guys are killing
me. Maybe the thing is go to the dollar store and buy your children stickers, and then they won't be nearly as needy for the Band-Aids to act as stickers.
Yeah, that's true. Because the idea of them just not getting hurt, which is what I just generally hope for, I'm like, hey, just don't get hurt.
Yeah, don't get hurt. 3 boys, okay, in the woods, don't get hurt.
It's unreal. They had basketball today, so I'm like co-coaching their basketball team, and within 10 minutes of that practice starting, we had a jam thumb and a fight between the two siblings who were on the same team. I'm like, you guys, this is unbelievable.
Oh no!
Like, how can you fight? You're in basketball practice, but it's just they're competitive and they're brothers and they're brothers. I don't know what to say. Anyway, this is too autobiographical.
Oh dear!
Yeah, I'm really excited about 2023.
What are you excited about? I like this optimism.
Well, I'm excited about lots of stuff. I mean, who knows what it holds,
Wow, that's kind of magical of you to be thinking that way. Who knows what it holds? I like this. A step away from the typical analytic. No, I didn't go there. I just think it's just a step away from the typical analytical viewpoint that you tend to hold on topics.
Well, I do. New Year's is my favorite holiday.
I did not know that.
With some slight competition from Thanksgiving, but I really enjoy New Year's for a lot of reasons. One of them is like I do kind of get excited about like, all right, what's this year going to bring? Now I could do without. I'll be honest with you. Part of my so this maybe jumps in a little bit like to our conversation about like what reflecting on 2022. What are you excited about in 2023? But actually, I think the way we actually put it was like the words that mattered in 2022, and I'm applying those words to 2023. So I might have just did a theme and variation there on our original topic. But one of the most important things that I've heard this year actually happened at this doctor's appointment in which, the nurse practitioner stuck me in the arm with implements of torture. But how awful is that, by the way? Like, hey, let's make this grown man seem like a child. Bring out the needles. Anyway,
I didn't realize you
I'm.
struggled with needles.
Oh my gosh, it was bad. I get the
Really?
cold sweats and whatever. Oh, it's terrible. She's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay. I'm just gonna breathe through it." She goes, "You're getting a shot, like a vaccination. I'm not taking blood." And I was like, "Listen, you deal with it how you want, and I'll deal with it how I want." But,
Oh my gosh, I'm learning
but
so much about you this evening. This is awesome. I
oh,
love this.
we've never talked about my phobia of needles. Okay,
No, and I
all
know
right.
the phobia of
I don't.
tattoos, but I didn't realize it came from
Well,
the needle
oh, it's the
issue.
needles.
I didn't realize
Yeah, because
that's
I
what it
would love to
was.
be. I'd love to be inked up, but I can't do it because I can't get in the chair because I'm afraid I'd hurt somebody. But like even like medically speaking, one time I had to go give blood, and they had the needle in my arm, and the nurse is like, there's no blood coming out." I'm like, "I'm not giving it to you." And she was like, "What?" And I was like, "I'm not doing it." And she was like, she just started like, she brought in somebody else. They brought another phlebotomist, and like they did it in another part, and no blood came out. And they're like, "Okay, you have got to stop." And I was like, "I
That is
cannot do
insane.
this." Yeah. So, but it's true
I've
story.
never known anybody to like refuse. Like, I'm not giving you blood. You can stick me all you want to. I
I
refuse to allow this implement
I
to
don't know
actually
that that's
suck blood from me.
right. To be like physiologically accurate, I'm not sure if that's possible, but for whatever reason, it wasn't working, and I was like, "I'm not doing it," and like my hands were like white, you know. But
Oh my
so actually, I
gracious.
have to get over it because, yeah,
You have to
I have to be. Well, okay, so my doctor was like, we were talking about all sorts of stuff, and she was like, oh, I don't remember. We're probably talking about weight or something like that. And she's like, "Well, at your age," and I
Ugh.
was like, "What?" She's like, "Well, you're not, you're 41 now, and like things are different, and you have to think about exercise in a different way, and like, you've got this thing and that thing." And I was like, "Wait, what do you mean? What's wrong
Yeah.
with my age?" And she's like, "You're really
Oh,
stuck on that." I was like, "Yeah, what the heck is
yeah,
that?"
exactly.
But so like I did my normal thing where I'm like grumpy as hell on the way home, and like I get home and I do a million, and the way I deal with my thoughts and my ideations or ruminations, whatever you want to call them, is that I get busy. And so like I get busy and I'm like, cleaning something or cooking something, and then it kind of hit me that like maybe my doctor's right, right? Like maybe it is time to like not think about my body as a 20-year-old might think about theirs. And so I think one of the most important, well, I don't know if it's the most important, but one of the things that I heard in 2022 that was important is like recognizing where your body's at, and not living in denial land about where your body's at, because the reality is like even though I'm healthy and I'm 41, but like it is true I can't jump really like I used to jump without hurting my knees, and like even running hurts. I mean, that's part of the reason why I was at the doctor. And so like I think where I'm at right now is like trying to do that with some grace and with a sense of like purpose. Like, okay, so maybe I can't do all of what I want to do, but what new things can I try? And what so I try and take it and like make it reframe it, right? It's a little bit new, so I haven't really thought all of this out yet, but like that's one of the things I'm kind of excited about. All right, like maybe I'll get a rowing machine or I'll walk. Like I love to walk, so that's not
Hmm.
really hard for me. Like I actually don't love running, so it's not like I do it because I'm like this is the exercise that's good for you. But actually, in talking to my doctor, she was like, well, actually, walking is just as good for a lot of things. So yeah, I think that's one of the things I'm kind of excited about. It's like let's just see where that adventure takes me. And
I think there's a
when it gets
happy
me out of rock
medium.
climbing, I never have to rock climb again. So never really enjoyed that.
Well, I think there are some things that, whether it's what you've always sort of done, like if you were always a runner with no breaks in between versus starting and stopping. And I'm not saying, I mean, I don't know, maybe you've always been a runner, but I'm like some people, like for me,
No,
I'm a stop starter. Like would do it. I'd be really dedicated for like a year or two and then kind of like fall off and try and get back. That's very different than someone who runs all the time. But I think that with anything, I just think that there's a bit of a happy medium that I can't necessarily say that I find from practitioners, where the whole, like, well, you're getting older, or, well, at your stage of life is sort of like their way of washing their hands of looking at something outside the very narrow scope of
Mm.
either their specialty or of conventional thoughts at the time. And it's like, well, hold on a second. Like, and I ask about things like, all right, well, what about either like dietary changes or supplements, or do these things like interfere, or have you heard about or tried, or and it's just sort of that, no, 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 we say this is the line, this is what our company line is, you're, oh, it's you're in your 30s, or, oh, you just had kids, or, oh, you're in your 40s. And then of course, for those of us who have crossed the threshold into the 50s, it turns into like, well, you are in your 50s. And I'm like, well, I'm not headed for the like home. So let's, hold on a second here. I'm like, and it's not about, I think there's kind of you can hold your
Yeah.
ground or still be age gracefully and accept it. But by the same token, not just give up. It's like, well, hold on a second. That's just not like an okay to say like, well, at this age, why even bother anymore? So I think I'll go get like, the box of Twinkies and have a seat and just like watch Golden Girls. Like, no, like, come on. There's other things, and there's health, and the holistic approach, I think, is just it's so difficult to fight for, particularly in New York.
Well, but you're right. And
Not to
that
get
last thing you
political,
said
but
really does.
that's how I feel.
Right. No, you're good. But that last thing you said kind of resonates with me, because my impression wasn't that like I can't do any exercise, right? It was that like, okay, I just have to think about exercise differently. Like, can I take the impact out? Or even like, I haven't really been great about this, but like my diet, like it might, and this is when she was like, how's your diet? I was like, well, generally good, but this week, not good,
Well, this week, I mean, that
Um,
probably for most people.
right. And that's what I was saying. Like, maybe I do need to think about like, maybe I shouldn't eat Tracy Marchanda's chocolate chip cookies. Although,
You got Tracy Marchanda cookies?
no, but I thought if I put it in this episode, she might feel guilty enough to send me some. So
I will
see if
say
it
that I
works.
was like fantasizing about like going over to Leslie Meyer's Small House and
Yeah.
all of the tastings with the 30 plus varieties of cookies she was making. I was like, I
Oh,
want
I
to go
know.
there and like
Seriously.
taste test. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I think like those sort of things are difficult for people. I mean, I'll be honest, it was difficult for me to like wrap my head around like that phrase. And and I have a tendency to sort of overanalyze and think about things, and I did, man. I spent hours thinking about that phrase, like at your age. I was like, man, what the hell does she know? And I was like, what is she, just because she said doctor, but right. But the reality is like, those are important considerations. And like, I think like you can fight it all you want. Like I could be miserable. I could be cranky about it. And I was, but like in the end, there's nothing I can do to change it. And so like, you have to adapt. And I think, again, this is so interesting because I didn't plan this, I promise. But Margie's like, no, he definitely did not plan it. But
I'm like, refrain from commenting.
yes. But I will say, like, it goes back to what Steve was talking about like being flexible and like, in its own way, it's a form of grief, right? The aging process.
Oh
And,
God.
like,
Yeah.
as we all
Rising
put
through.
another year behind us. Yeah. Right. And
it does feel like a failure. I mean, how many times do we get on and I'm always like, oh my God, like, look at whatever. Like there's a new line.
Yeah, I mean, I know. Should I wear my hair up? Should I wear my hair down?
Nick has to deal with this pre-show. Like that's what ends up happening. He'll try and talk about something. So you're like, stop. Like, I need to like tell me which one looks better. He's like, oh God Almighty. I
just feel bad that like I feel like I should probably not be the guy who's advising on this. Like, I mean, I just don't think that I have any sense of fashion or aesthetic.
It's not about fashion. It's about like, me, like Margie, that looks stupid. Don't do that. Like, that's all. That's what a friend does.
Well, if you look stupid, I would tell you. I would tell you
Okay.
if you look stupid. 100%. Do you think I wouldn't?
Okay. I don't know sometimes. Sometimes I'd be like, those will be funny.
Oh, I would tell you. Yeah. Let's just get her on quick. 1, 2, 3, go.
Exactly.
I do that all the time, actually.
Yeah.
Who's starting? You are. And I hit record.
Go. I'm like,
Yeah.
jeez Louise, man.
That
But no, I think that going
is
back to
true.
it, I think that the idea of failure and superpower and rising through is the way that we find that superpower. Definitely when it comes to aging or health or anything, those are major things. I mean, I agree. You can't treat your body the way that you did in your 20s. And sometimes how we feel right now is a result of how we did treat our bodies in our 20s, when the effects
Yeah,
weren't
right.
as
Right.
immediate or apparent. But I think that there's also, like I said, that happy medium. I would like to think that you can,
Mm.
like, fight is definitely the word I go to first in my brain, but I don't mean like as if you can reverse aging or not age or whatever. But I just don't think I'm not a person who can take it lying down. That's just not who I am. So I want advice from practitioners into what are the best possible things to fortify your body to age in a way that's like, going to help you in whether it's muscle or whether it is sleep or changes in diets or with this or things like you said, like impact, like running and all that. Like I know, forget that, like there's no way. But I also couldn't start something high impact if I think you were always doing those things, like people who have been runners the whole life. That's one thing. But I mean, I noticed the biggest differences in recovery. Like you go out and do whatever and the next day you're like, oh my god, what
Yeah.
happened here? But that's when I
Yeah.
say to myself, then okay, then what parts of that could I do differently to not do that? But it's yeah. And I mean, there's things I enjoy. I mean, like when I was in Florida with my friend Terry, she's gracious enough to invite me down there. She's a condo and all this stuff. And we would go out every morning and play pickleball. And it was so
Oh,
fun,
nice.
and running around and all of this. But I definitely remember like the next morning waking up being like, oh yeah, okay. That
Yeah.
start, stop kind of, motion being different than more sustained. But it still felt good to say, but I can still go out there and jump in and do something like that. And I'm grateful for it. I'm certainly not any star athlete, but I'm grateful that my health is such that I can do those things. And I think that's where it's like, investing in yourself. We were talking a little bit about self-care before the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that investment in yourself, whether it is in something as basic as quality sneakers, like making sure you have quality pair of sneakers when you're doing these things to your body is much more important, I think, at this age than previous.
Yeah. I think that self-care is kind of the second thing that I'm really excited about in 2023 and that I have dabbled in since 2020. I think the phrase self-care was something I hadn't consciously thought of until 2020. Because like, what else do you do in lockdown? Like,
Yeah.
but what happened was I got this impression that like, and I have like a revolting, or I don't know, like a repulsion from the idea of self care because it sounds to me like, pamper
Well, they
yourself.
turned it into such
I
a spa day thing versus actual
right.
take an assessment of what you need in order to take care of yourself, and that's can go a lot of different ways. Oops, sorry.
Right. So I went from, well, I can't pamper myself because I don't enjoy that. Right. I don't
No
like, I
pedicures,
don't,
Nick.
no, it's like painful. Like when I have to get my hair cut, it's like the only thing I like less than getting shots is getting my hair cut, which is
Really?
why I don't do it very often. Oh my gosh. I hate it. I mean, partly again, that's another, all right. So let's just go there. I guess we'll talk about
Okay,
it.
I'm
But
excited.
like one of the
This
other,
is fun.
well, I mean, like, you cut your, from, all right, so you get your hair cut and like the hairdresser and often will make comments about like, what do you want me to do on the top where it's a little thinner? And it's like,
Yeah.
so
Yep.
I was like, I don't know, can you thicken it up? And she's like, what? And I was like, I was joking. But, so like that's another area
Yeah.
where you have
It's
to be
great.
flexible. And it's like, okay, well, yeah. And I'm not like, I'm not like obsessed with these things, but like these are these little pieces of self-care that I'm starting to find that like being compassionate with yourself around these little stupid things like, being 41, losing some of your hair, or a lot of it in some cases. Or some people, it's like by 41, they're totally bald, you know?
Yeah, no, and I
Um,
can't even, but I don't think it's a stupid little thing, to be honest, because it honestly changes, when you look at yourself in the mirror, you're like, who the hell are you? Or like, I
yeah,
mean, we joke about the hair or whatever, but when starting to get grays and stuff, and it was just like, I give people so much credit who can just say no, like whatever comes in, and at whatever age. And I'm like, that's amazing to me, because I can't do that. And but it does, it drastically changes how you see or view yourself, or for some people it does. For me, it
hmm
does, and I remember, last time I was at the hairdresser, I had even said, I'm like, so how bad, like, is the gray all through it? And just, that's a value judgment. Like, there's nothing bad about it. It just is,
right.
And she was laughing and she said, well, Margie, the problem is it's mostly right there in the front. Like, you have almost nothing in the rest of your hair, but it's because when you look straight on, you see it, you think that it's everywhere. And I just feel like that's applicable, not because I want people to know like about that, which I just shared with the world, but it's just the idea that like what you see, like how you see yourself, when
Right.
you look in the mirror, you can only see this front, 2D really kind of space. You can't really see the whole thing. And so what that then becomes your vision of it. And so I was like, oh, it just kind of made me think of this right here. It's your perspective of it, and but when
Hey there. If you're listening or watching this recording, we apologize for reasons we can't fully explain. We lost our ability to record there temporarily, but we're back up and running. And so we were talking a little bit about self-care in 2023, and all of the ways, in which that becomes more important as you age. And I was thinking that, for me personally, it's really trying to develop a better sense, a better self-awareness, so that I can practice better self-care. And Margie is smirking because I just wanted to say that again because I like the way it rhymes, and I am proud of it. Self-care, self-aware. You know, maybe in 2023 I will get so self-aware that I will no longer be afraid of needles, and I will get self-care and self-aware tattooed on each of my legs.
oh, please don't do that. I will not allow that to happen.
Right down the calf. Right down the front of
No.
my calf. So when I wear shorts, everyone will know that I'm practicing self-care and I'm self-aware.
As your friend, I wouldn't do that, and I doubt Evan would be on board with that. He'll be like, no, dude, no, not happening.
That's true. Evan is way cool, and he wouldn't allow that to happen.
Evan Schapp,
That's probably true.
1808 tattoo people. He is the best.
Yeah, he's a really super cool guy.
Yeah, he is. So is his wife Jasmine. They are amazing people.
Yeah, for sure. So
Well,
I don't know what does self-care look like for you in 2023, Margie? What is there anything in particular?
Yeah, I'm tackling like the thing I don't want to tackle, that I haven't wanted to tackle, that I'm like an ostrich with their head in the sand, and it's all the financial and budgeting.
I know what it is. Yes.
I just what? What do you know? What do you know?
Well, I like to be right. I like to be right, so I guessed correctly. But I also I'm terrible at it, but I really do love personal finance. I think it's super cool. Also, well, here's what is interesting. So I love my parents, and in a lot of ways, a lot of what I learned from them was survivalist, right? In terms of like, how do you make enough money? How do you pay your bills? And what I'm learning in my own sort of personal quest here to be more financially aware, is that a lot of what I learned wasn't great practice. And so that's hard, right? Because like, how do you, there's a lot of things that to unpack there. But what I would say, Margie, and this is super exciting to me because of a lot of reasons, but there are so many resources now. The podcast world and personal finance is awesome. And they're not just like idiots who talk about money. Like there's some really good podcasts about money. And there's great like social media. Well, right. Yes. No, there's
Yeah.
no denying
So
it.
for me,
But
it's like think of whatever topic that you are like, I will die if I have to sit here and listen to this. Whatever that is in your
fashion?
brain. Okay. So imagine like that's what you have to do. That you have to figure out what sources and resources to use so that you can overhaul your entire wardrobe, get something that's
Ooh.
fashionably forward within your budget, makes you look good, and it on and on. Okay, you would hate that. You would hate it. And if you had some specialists come and try and help you, you'd be like, just shut up and do it. Just like make my closet better and go away and don't ever talk to me again. That is how I feel about budgeting right there. Like, I don't want to have to listen to it. I don't want to have to read about it. I just want it done. I want someone to take, here's all my info. Just make me a plan and I will follow it to a T. I'm not saying I won't follow. I just don't want to have to think about it and do it and make it happen. And God forbid, use a Google spreadsheet or any other kind of spreadsheet because I hate them. And I don't want to,
What?
I know the theories behind them. I know all that. I'm a Leo. Leos are horrible with budgets.
Ugh.
And it's just a picture of reminding myself of that. And I mean, I just don't like it. And I know part of it has to do, I know it does. And this is something I have to get over. And it's ridiculous. And especially at my age, but like I grew up and the sky was always falling, always. Um, we did not have money growing up. My mom, God bless her, like was a secretary and she was raising two little girls on a secretary salary. My dad rarely paid the child support on time, if at all. And so it was really hard for her and really, really stressful. And so I know some of that is like left over from that. And I need to like, it's not mine to carry. It wasn't mine to carry. Like I just got to let go of it. I realize that, but something about it always feels like the sky is falling. It's almost like I'm afraid to look. It's like for people who are afraid to go to the doctor because of what the diagnosis could possibly be. It's like I'm
Right.
afraid to look at my finances for fear of what it really might be. And you're too young for this, but for listeners who are my age, there were commercials on TV where like the little old lady was so poor she was opening like the cat food can with like five sad Triscuits or Ritz crackers or something, and that was her meal because she couldn't afford anything else. I have nightmares about that. Like I don't want to look at my retirement system. I don't want to look at what my finances are. Like it just all of it is just feels very doomsday, fatalistic, and horrible to me. And I just want it to magically be done and there and someone go like you're gonna be okay, like it's just like, so there it is, there's all my dirty laundry aired.
Well,
That's my self-care in 2023 because of your text that said to me when I was like I hate all that and I was grumpy, and you said, well, let me ask you something, do you like being stressed out? And I may have
right.
looked at that text when it came across and been like, fuck you, Nick. And then I was just like, well, he's right, I don't like being stressed out, and he totally called me out on it. And no, I don't want to answer this text. So, but no, I don't like being
Yeah.
stressed out about it. So that's my
Yeah.
self care. And to remove that
And I
stress.
think you're not alone in this regard. I think there's a lot of people out there who are stressed about I mean, especially right now with like, this talk of recession or whatever, and like the economy. I mean,
Groceries out of
like all the
control
jargon
prices.
aside, groceries are insane, right? Like as a dad
Insane.
of three boys, like I'm spending double what I was spending last year. I was telling Margie, I was like, I just had to redo my budget because I'm spending twice as much on groceries. And like in a year, like, and guess
Yeah.
what? My salary didn't double. So like,
No.
I got to think you're not the only person stressed about that. So
No,
I
groceries are
think that
crazy.
might be
Like
an
just trying to eat
area.
healthy.
Well, that's a whole separate thing. Yeah. Um, in 2023, I think we should do some podcasts with some financial people.
Oh God.
Because, but I think this is an area of like failure for a lot of people, like deep seated failure. And like,
It
and
is.
I grew up, and I have the same, like, I actually know now that I've been like, kind of unpacking some of this stuff, like money trauma is a real thing, like people experience trauma from money. Oh yeah. There's like whole books on money trauma.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, is there a chapter on me? I'm sure that that's what this is.
Yeah, there is. There's a chapter on me, I'll tell you, because like they were talking about it. I was like, wow, yeah, I mean, like, yeah, and I, one of six kids. My mom was a teacher's assistant, and my dad was self-employed, and
Mm-hmm.
We never had a lot of money. I'm not like saying boo hoo. We didn't have a horrible child. I actually had a great childhood, but money was one of those areas where there was never like the idea of a savings account to me
Mm-hmm.
was like revolutionary, and I didn't open one until last year.
Mm-hmm.
Like actually opened a high yield savings account and started an emergency fund, like
Yeah, well, just that, the
just in
emergency
case. Like
fund, like when they say you should have 3 months worth of, being able to pay
6
all your
now
bills for 3 months. Oh God, like
during
that
a
to me
during
is
yeah,
terrifying.
yeah, I can't do that.
You
But
know,
I think the other piece of that though is like you also should exercise more than I exercise. You should have a weight that is less than my current weight. You know what I mean? Like all of those are parameters and guidelines. They're not meant to be used as punitive measures. Right? They're
don't
supposed
they
to be
feel
helpful.
punitive?
They
They
do
feel
because in
punitive.
your brain, they do, but in your brain, that's your brain doing the punitive thing. Because they're like, you should have, right, six
Mm-hmm.
months of right now they're saying 6 months is ideal of bills in the bank. But like it's only you who puts the second arrow in just to kind of tie all this back together. Like that idea
Hmm.
of like it's your thoughts that say like, well, I'm so dumb that I haven't done this, and like this is my fault, and I'm an awful person, and you do all that. All they did was say like, this is what you should have, right?
Hmm.
So I think some of the like money trauma stuff that I'm starting to unpack is like reframing how I think about that. But I'll be honest with you that every other week I'm looking at my bank account going like, what have I done with my life, right?
Oh yeah. Oh
And
God. Yeah.
I'm in the opposite camp in some ways because like I've got 3 kids and I pay child support and I pay
Mm-hmm.
I pay a lot. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think and I have my kids equally, like we have
Mm-hmm.
50-50 custody. So I have my kids just as much time, but I pay I don't,
No, a few of
so
my friends who
I
have the
think there's a lot of
financial impact of child support is huge, huge.
yeah.
And for
Yeah.
me,
I mean, so
my kids are obviously grown, but for me, it's the loss. I mean, it was intertwined finances for almost 26 years. And
right.
that included, the plan for retirement and the nest egg and all of that.
Mm,
And weighing what you want and weighing self-care and weighing choices. There are things that, we've talked about all the different things that, when you pivot or choose things, you let go of other things. And that financial
right.
security um is something I gave up. And again, going back to, well, at your age, well, there was a lot
Yeah.
of building and savings that should have been done, I mean, that aren't I walked away from, and that was my
Right.
choice. And
Right.
I don't regret that choice, but it came with things that now I'm like panicking about, that I'm like, how do I, whatever. And it's not,
I
it's just one of those where
I
I'm like,
also
I have to
think
just sit down and face the monster in the closet and tell myself, like, you
mhm,
are catastrophizing this. Let's
yeah.
settle down, calm down.
I
Because
also
it's
think
fear.
there's another sort of layer on this that might be occupational. And I don't know if this is true or not, but a lot of people in education take their first year and they add 30 years and like that's when they have to retire. So like for me I'd be 60,
Hmm.
right? I was 30 years old when I started teaching. I actually started teaching late.
I didn't know
But
that. I
like
mean, I knew you started late, but I didn't realize. I never thought to ask how old you were when you started.
yeah, very few people retire at 60 though, right?
Hmm.
So like this idea of like teacher retirement is so different than other retirements. So I also think there's like more of a so there's that's good and bad, right? It comes with a pressure to
Hmm.
be able to retire by that age, but there's also the sense that like you have a pension, which almost no industry has. You know,
Right, but it also comes with the at some in no, the pension, absolutely. I mean, that is something that many, that's one of the reasons you do it. You stay in a job that doesn't give you the earning capacity that you could have in the
right?
business world. However, the business world comes with a tremendous risk, and you have to be financially savvy to do the savings. So, God bless people with that. Um, so no, definitely. But in our business anyway, I don't know about other things like law enforcement and other civil service type stuff, but for us, there comes a point where the earning capacity just isn't there. They want you out because you're at the top of that age system, tier system. And so now, like, the percentages or the increases or the contributions or whatever, it's almost like you're almost losing money
Right.
to stay in that. But that is what your budget is based on, is not a retirement budget on your actual income budget. So I'm trying to like make up for lost time in that world. And then,
But can you,
God,
could you imagine not working though?
no, God, no. And I mean, I'm not. No, I mean, thank goodness, like in my mind, I'm like, I'm not ready to retire. There's still stuff that I want to accomplish in my career, but it's the realization of just exactly that, and in the teacher retirement system, it is your highest 3 years, not your last 3 years, but your highest 3 years, and that's important too. And that's part of, kind of decision making, is looking and saying like, okay, well, I have to figure out where's the potential to earn my highest 3 years that my retirement will be based on. And if it's not in the career that or in the position rather that I'm currently in, then what does that look like? And what am I willing to do? Like, am I willing to relocate maybe somewhere farther away than my friends and family? Is that worth that? Is it fair to a school district to take something just because? But your retirement system is real. Like, that's what's going to be based on for the rest of however long you live, but then there's quality of life, and then there's wanting to be with friends and family, so it's just, there's a lot to consider when you start thinking about that. But when you get to the point where like, I need 3 high years, and you and I have shared a little bit on the podcast. We've never gotten into it in detail, but with career trajectories not going exactly according to plan, like my retirement system took a huge hit, and to make that back, you can't make up for months of lack of contribution. Like, that's just, so that is a compounding factor. So yeah, there's so financial stress, to me, the awareness, to be self-aware and self-care, is the self-awareness that this is a much bigger stressor on me than I realized it was until that fateful text that you sent me. And I was just like, and I really took it to heart and thought about it and was like, wow, like this is really,
I thought you just ignored me.
I was mad. I had my own grumpy temper tantrum, and I was just like, oh, but it was because, and I realized, I'm like, well, why are you so upset by this? And I was like, well, because you cut me to the quick. It's like, yeah, no, I don't want to be stressed about this. Nobody wants to be stressed about this. Of course I don't want to be stressed about it. And I realized, like, well, look how stressed you are. This is telling you something. Like, use this as information. And then I was like, all right, well, let me be curious about this. Why am I having this big reaction? Why am I so stressed? And then I started going through everything I just got on saying. And I was like, this is the goal for 2023. The goal is to face this, slay this, feel good about it, and, be the person who's in charge of it, rather than it being, like I said, this monster under your bed or in your closet that you're always like,
I think it's a big stressor for most people, honestly, whether they talk about it or not. But money is like a big determinant in a lot of your life.
Yeah.
And I think I think you're right. You either control it or it controls you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which I could say, I haven't totally figured out how to do that yet, but.
Yep. And you offered to help me with this whole spreadsheet thing and budget thing and all of that. And I've had a couple other people who've offered, and it's interesting because all 3 of you have like 3 different perspectives on budgeting, and that's when I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll be curious about that, and then think like what one fits best for you. And then I did order the Psychology of Money book that you, in one of your many.
I love that book.
You need this in your life, and I actually ordered it, and so now it's sitting over in my pile and just stares at me. So
I think I loaned that book to somebody. I have to find that. That's a really good book. But there's a lot of books now out about, and there's a little bit in that book about psychology. About the trauma of money. But there's like whole podcasts devoted to that. In fact, as soon as I can find some, I'll share the links. Yeah, I would love that. I mean, I think that most people's failures probably are financial, and even our our job stuff, like the biggest implication, aside from like the career implications, are money, right?
Yeah,
And like
well, they
so,
say that's one of the biggest factors in divorce is money and finances, and maybe not the amount necessarily, but the handling of them and the decisions about them. It certainly was in my case.
yeah, I have a lot to say about that, but that's probably a whole separate a whole separate discussion. Just because, like, it's funny and it's not funny.
But it's it's a
It's like,
stressor.
well, and it's so like bizarre in court systems how they make decisions. Like, and they they sort of feign this like, oh well, it's based on this ratio or this equation. It's like, great, your equation isn't taking into consideration a lot of things, right? And so it's kind of funny as somebody who has been through that system to kind of like to look at it with a more critical lens and think like, we have got to have a better system for this. If there's anything that I soapbox about these days, it's that, because I just feel like it's so bizarre to me that that as a 50-50 household, one party pays the other party depending on who makes more. Like, that just seems like that's the best we could come up with. Like, it doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't resonate with me, but I'm also not a lawyer, thankfully. All right.
So what we originally were talking about, you had said impactful things from 2022 that you were going to carry forward or that you took from 2022. Like, you had said words of wisdom or something along those lines.
Yeah. Well, I think one of them, I was sharing, like we shared the phrase about like at your age. I think that turned out to be a more crucial phrase than I imagined. I think practice self-care is another one that like I had to get more nuanced about in 2022 and think about, but it's not just this idea of like pampering yourself. It's about really getting self-aware and recognizing in yourself what you need, which is huge, by the way, like, and really hard to do, especially for me. Like, I'm very kind of intuitive, and I think it's hard, as easy as it is for me to like be analytical about a number of things. When it comes to myself, it's hard for me to be analytical, right? It's hard for me to like really drill down and like figure out like, what am I feeling right now, about this, or what do I need?
You're trying to logically think of it as you're feeling it, and we both know from our training that your cognitive brain and your emotional brain, when one elevates, the other goes down. So like, it's that constant thing. So as you're feeling an emotion, but then you're trying to think about the emotion, you have to remove the emotion to think about it, but then you're back in the so it's that's a very difficult thing to do. So
and then I get frustrated. I get frustrated with myself because I'm like, why can't I do this? Like, I can do all of these sophisticated things and I cannot like just say how I'm feeling in a particular moment. So one of the things that I've gotten away from a little bit in the last few weeks of let's be honest, last 3 months of 2022 is meditating, because I really felt like that was helping. And I've gotten too far from that. And so I'd like to get back to that. And I think those are, that's kind of like the big stuff that has been on my mind. But there's also a lot of podcasts out there that I want to check out. One of the ones I want to check out is on gaslighting. There's a whole podcast now on gaslighting. I think it's called The Gaslight Effect. Yeah, and I think that would be really fascinating, because I think a lot of us are like living in gaslit world. Lit. You just want to say lit. That's what all the kids say. Lit. That's lit. Well, maybe we should put it out. Sorry.
Good Lord.
There's no charge for the dad jokes here.
I didn't realize this was going to be Dad Joke Wednesday.
Every day is Dad Joke Day.
But
I think that's one of the that's another thing to do, is really like, in 2022 I want Toasted, but also myself, to really dive into some other podcasts. I'd like to start collaborating more with other podcasts and talking to other podcast hosts and learning more about the podcast industry, because there's a lot to learn.
Yeah.
And that kind of taps into my self-care, because one of the things that I realize about myself is that I have got to be learning all the time, because if I stop learning, I get like fidgety and I start ruminating and I'm not happy. I need to be creative. I need to be learning. And so the podcast for me has been my thing to like learn new stuff in. And I'm learning so much every day. Like, actually, it's both a combination of learning and adapting. So like, why did that stop recording? I can't explain it. I don't know. It just did. And so, we'll just keep going and we'll splice them together. So,
well, and I have to say that the effect of your personality trait with that is just like, we'll figure it out. We'll just whatever. And I'm like, and as far as like, well, hold on a second. Let's just like back up, get all that figured out, then do. And I realize like how much that paralyzes me. And so this has pushed me to and I'm noticing the effect of it in other areas of just like, well, it's not perfect, but here, let's just try, we'll get this. And I'm like, that's a very relaxed approach for me. That's very anti my typical. I think it's good.
Could you practice that approach with the money stuff? That's a challenge. Boom. Mic drop.
Huh? What?
I don't know. Could you practice so it doesn't have to be perfect, right? So like one of the things that I've learned about budgeting is I always get it wrong. And it can be really frustrating. So you budget, you go back and you look at your expenditures, you re-budget for the next month, you get it wrong, but you're getting a little better every time. And so to me, that's been one of the things that has been frustrating and I've had to learn, is just accepting that I'm never 100% right, but I'm trying. Same thing with the podcast, to be honest with you. Like I recognize that I can't spend as much time as I want to spend in production, and I don't have the tools one would need to do a perfect job anyway. So it's just a little bit of that,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I also, along those notes, that note is, I'm really excited about like taking Toasted on the road. I'm excited to be at EduCon and talk at EduCon. That's going to be really fun in February.
I'm a little terrified of it. I'm like,
it's going to be great
live on stage. Like here, we can always press a button. Sometimes we probably should, but I'm just like, oh Lord Almighty, what is going to happen there?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be fine. And then the other one that we're doing is NYSCATE in Waterloo, which I'm really excited to be presenting there.
Watkins Glen.
Watkins Glen. Sorry, what did I say? Waterloo? Oh, W. Yeah, sorry, Watkins Glen. So that's exciting. Those are our two first sort of presentations as a podcast.
Yeah.
And I think generally speaking, I'd like to explore some of those things. I think that the idea of our coaching of folks, the rebound coaching and helping people overcome their difficulties, is starting to kind of become a thing, because people are reaching out, and so I'm excited to do more of that in the future. And if people are interested in that, they can kind of look us up on the website and toastedpodcast.com and click on links for that. But I think all of that stuff is really exciting in 2023. So I am optimistic.
I love that. I love hearing you say you're optimistic. That's really...
Well, you know why? Because Mars is on a slight angle.
I knew you were going to be a jerk. I knew you were going to have to do some kind of... I'm like, something's coming. I can tell. You have a smirk on your face. I'm like, here it comes. Here it comes. Just take the compliment, Farnoli. Just take it.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
But no, I'm grateful for this podcast because it is a creative outlet, and that is something that I'm realizing, that not having the creativity as a teacher, as an elementary teacher, the creativity is something that, it was just part of every day. And so going into administration at the same time my kids were in high school, there was the lack of creativity on the mom front, and the lack of creativity in the job front. And I didn't realize just how much it fed my soul in that way, and how much I need to be creative. And so I am so appreciative of this. And the conversations we've had with people, And I can't wait to have guests, more regularly on the podcast, because it has just been so wonderful to hear people's stories, to share people's stories, to, have people reach out. And then ideas that they share, hey, this would be a great topic, or talk about this or whatever. And like the music episode, like so many people have said,
Yeah.
we'd love another themed thing with the songs. Like it's just been, that's been fantastic. And then I love the conversations that I've had and the reconnections with people I've had as a result of, the conversations on Toasted. So I'm excited to continue
Yeah.
that. I truly am.
I've had a lot of people reach out about our last conversation with Steve Scouten. And by the way,
It was an
I gotta do a quick shout out. Steve, I just want you to know, since I know you're a loyal listener, that tonight I'm drinking a Big Ditch for you. So, hey,
Yay.
Burner.
Cheers to Steve-O,
but,
because
yeah.
with all the weather in Buffalo and all the problems, I mean, there's been just tremendous tragedy.
Yeah.
But so many people have been stranded, and so he and Ryan actually had to drive back from Tampa because there was no flights.
Oh,
so, yeah. So he will appreciate a Big Ditch when he gets home.
Yeah, good. Well, yeah, a really wonderful conversation. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that, definitely give it a shout. Jeez, I can't talk. Give it a listen. And I also wanted to shout out. That's what I was thinking faster than I was.
Oh, okay. I was
processing.
Like, why are you shouting?
Yeah. Well, our YouTube channel has surprised me in terms of the number of people who watch the podcast. I'm not sure how I feel about that exactly, because I don't look.
I prefer watching
great
to
in
listening.
some of those episodes. Do you really?
Yeah.
You do? I
do. I think because, I don't know, maybe it's a theater thing. Like I pay attention a little bit better, but also I love like the facial expressions or the things that are like, you can't see some things when you're listening, obviously.
Yeah.
So you don't, see some of the goofy stuff. And I
right.
enjoy that.
But I did just post, so we posted Sean Nelms on there and or Dr. Sean Nelms. And that's a great conversation about continuous improvement. Dr. Leslie Meyer-Small is on there. And I'm working on getting us caught up. I fell a little bit behind as the semester carried me off into grading season. So I'm trying to get caught up. I should be fully caught up this week. But if you haven't had a chance to check out the YouTube channel, please check that out. And please leave comments and messages and rate and all that stuff on whatever platform you're listening to us, because that really does help us a lot. And on
all those
Tuesdays we've got
stuff. I didn't realize how important those were, like the subscribe buttons and all that. Now I know why when I watched up on YouTube, people were saying like, subscribe and share, if you will, and because I didn't realize those analytics and how important they are to trying to grow and the number of audiences and all of this. There's just a lot of analytics with it. That's been interesting to learn about. It really has.
Well, and so much to learn too. There's the way all of this works is really interesting, and and you're right. There's a lot to learn, and I think both of us enjoy doing this, but in the end, we've got to grow it, and we do that with the help of our loyal listeners. So,
yay.
Yeah, for sure, that's awesome. And then I did want to also mention that every other Tuesday we do every Tuesday we do Toasted Tuesday, but every other week it's a blog that we push out. And so you can check out our website, www.toastedpodcast.com. Click on the link that says blog at the top. And if you haven't read those, there's some really interesting pieces by Margie and myself, and we try and alternate so you get a different perspective every time.
Yep. And Nick, just shout out to you for your recent blog yesterday. It's a Success Crucible, and it's a really neat, kind of dive into the dichotomy of, do you pursue money or do you pursue happiness, and why do we think it has to be one or the other? And it's just, I enjoy the challenge questions that you gave to all of us at the end of it. So it gave a lot to think about. So I would encourage everybody to read that.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah, it was fun to write. It was challenging in a lot of ways to write those blogs. The writing itself comes to me fairly easy, but sometimes it's what is meaningful and what is helpful, I think is the trick. But all right, Dr. Wright, I am off to watch The Godfather 2 with my niece who is heading back
Oh,
to LA tomorrow. So
oh
we watched Godfather
wow.
1 earlier in the week, and she said we should watch Godfather 2 before I go, and I was like, that's a great idea. Let's do that. So
Oh, I love that. That's
um
awesome. So glad that you get to spend time with her.
well, I try to share my culture a little bit with her, so
Does she grow up
Godfather's
in
about the
LA?
extent of it, to be honest.
Oh,
She did not. No, she is a
oh, okay.
transplant in LA. She grew up originally down near New York City, and then they migrated to Naples. At one point, she was actually my student, and I was lucky enough that I had a principal who I could convince to let me do some electives. She was into theater, but we didn't offer a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And she liked to read and write, and she wanted to do Shakespeare. So they let me do a class called Shakespeare and Film, and
Oh,
I
wow.
taught Shakespeare plays, and then we watched Shakespeare
Yeah.
films and did some comparative film analysis. And it ran for 2 years. I taught that class. It was a lot of fun. And then I left to pursue other things. But so she was actually in that class the first time. She and 6 other people. It was a really small group,
Oh,
but
how
fun.
fun though. Yeah, that's
Super fun.
actually
Yeah.
Shakespeare is a super popular course at Canandaigua Academy, or always was. Scott Schauman, shout out to him. He taught it for years and years and years,
Oh.
and but he just uh, announced retirement, so I'm not sure what's going to be happening to the class. But my son took it, and it was one of his favorite courses in
Oh
high
yeah.
school. Yeah,
A lot of those courses are falling by the wayside. It makes me real sad.
hmm
Um, I don't know. This is part of another one of my things is to look into digital humanities because I'm increasingly
Ooh,
interested in the digital, yeah, the digitalization of texts and the affordances that brings. So some of my
hmm.
some of my hope is that I can work some of that into working with districts on doing more of that kind of work and getting away from books, not
That's
away from, but
fascinating. Yeah, no, no,
incorporating. Yeah.
that's
So a
fascinating.
lot of like my work at the college right now, well, not a lot of it, a lot of some of my work at the college right now is around that too. So I'm kind of excited to see how we can kind of bring those worlds together. So I'm also
Yeah,
I'm kind of putting the bug in their ear about like podcasting in classrooms. Like, let's do more of
yes,
that. And, digital content creation, I just think is so important for this next generation because
yeah.
the reality is like most of them aren't going to sit down and write books, but they might sit down and do a podcast. And really smart people have really good things to say. And if they could just have a platform,
Yeah. Well,
they
it's
could
like
do it.
trying to legitimize graphic novels. It's the same type of fight. So before we go, and before you go enjoy The
Yeah.
Godfather 2 with your niece, since New
Yep.
Year's is your favorite holiday, how do you
Yeah.
celebrate that? Do you
This
have a
year is going to be
tradition? Do you
alone.
have a certain thing? Or like what do you do? Is there a certain is it the
No,
eve or is it
I'm
the day or is it the stroke of midnight? Like what about it
yep.
has meaning or do you do? That's my question.
So it's been different every year. I've never had a consistent practice. This year, the boys are with their mother, so as they were for Christmas Eve. So this year, I've been kind of committed to the idea of like spending those holidays alone in like some kind of reflective mode.
Mhm.
Um,
That's what I did this year.
and so yeah, so this year, I will spend Christmas Eve or think sorry, what is it? New Year's Eve, just kind of reflecting and writing. That's my plan.
Hmm.
Um, And to be honest with you, I don't even know if I'll stay up till midnight this year.
Mhm.
But I'm still excited about it. Like I've had years where I've had, the huge parties and the bonfires and we've done all sorts of fireworks. But
Oh, neat.
this year I'm kind of looking forward to like a nice quiet year. I think you talked about that a little bit, like a
Mhm.
quiet year.
Yeah, kind
So
of quietly, yep, saying goodbye to it. So, yeah, I was just curious as to what you're going to be doing on New Year's Eve.
that's it right now. I might go for a walk because I can't go for a run.
Yeah, get some sturdy shoes. You're in your 40s
I've
now.
got some, yes. Oh, now that I'm at that age.
You're that age.
Yeah, I
Just
know.
promise me you'll stay with tie shoes and not Velcro. Don't go there.
So I'm actually excited about Velcro shoes.
Oh, no. We cannot be seen together.
Come on.
Which not like
Those
that
things are
ever
the-
happens, but you know.
I think Velcro shoes are where it's at. But...
You scare me.
All right, Dr. Wright. Should we
Have a
cheers?
good evening. Have fun with your niece and the Godfather. I feel like there should be Godfather music. Have a cannoli.
Right. Leave the car. Take the cannolis. All right.
Take the cannolis.
Cheers to 2022.
Yeah.
And all the lessons we learned. And cheers to 2023 and all the things we will learn.
And all the magic that is meant to be had.
Oh, yes.
Cheers.
All that. Cheers.
All that. Cheers. Happy New Year, people.
Happy New Year, everyone. Have a great night. See you later.